Welcome back in to another episode of Frogs Insider, episode 13. As a matter of fact, I am Jamie Plunkett here, as always, with Melissa Treewasser. We are the TCU podcast for the Dave Campbell's Republic of Football Network. We've got a great episode for you tonight, breaking down the preseason All-Big 12 football team, where four Horned Frogs made the list, as well as a TCU baseball recruiting update, and Damion Baugh made his Los Angeles Lakers appearance earlier this week in Sacramento, which was kind of fun. We'll get to all of that. But first, this podcast is sponsored in part by Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel is, in my opinion, the purveyor of the softest hoodies and t-shirts I have ever owned. In fact, as you can see on the screen, Melissa, I am wearing one right now.
Folks, I am not, but that's for reasons that will be discussed later. I had to rep a little Sacramento pride.
Had to go a little Sacktown because of one of the comments that we'll get to from Twitter, one of the Twitter questions that we'll get to in a little bit. But if you want to join in on the comfort of Home Field Apparel, you can do so by heading over to homefieldapparel.com and using the code FROGSIN15. That's FROGS, IN15, to get 15% off of your first purchase. And if you love that first purchase of Home Field Apparel so much that you want to go back for more, the code FROGSIN15 will get you 10% off your second purchase and beyond. So head over to homefieldapparel.com and order something from the good brand today. Melissa.
Jamie.
Before we get into TCU related things, I want to recognize the 1 year anniversary. A big day, big anniversary, big moment. The happy 1 year anniversary to the Pac-12 Board of Directors officially opening up negotiations for a new media rights deal.
It did not go well.
They said on this day, July 5th, the day that we're recording this, 2022, Pac-12 Board of Directors met this morning and authorized the conference to immediately begin negotiations for its next media rights agreements. Still waiting.
Yeah. In theory, the announcement, which, came shortly on the heels of the Big 12 doing some good negotiating or having theirs expire. I can't remember the timeline of it all. It seemed prudent for the Pac-12 to go ahead and get its name out there. The problem with getting your name out there is you can't leave it out there for a year without any kind of resolution as to what's happening. And in the last year, the Pac-12 has now had to deal with the Four Corner schools. Think about maybe will they or won't they leaving. San Diego State now, will they or won't they letter of resignation, intent to resign that is not an intent to resign that might actually get them kicked out. They've had to stoop so low as to court SMU potentially. Things and as a fan of some West Coast schools and having some ties to some of the Pac-12 schools, I am not reveling in the dumpster fire that is the media rights negotiation for that conference, like many of my Big 12 brethren are. But I understand why people are laughing at the Pac-12 because they truly cannot get out of their own way when it comes to figuring out how to survive the next round of realignment, which is inevitable.
I am laughing at the Pac-12. I will gladly admit that I am doing that because we know, and we have known as TCU people for a really long time, Melissa, that this whole industry of college football and college athletics as a whole is you're either growing or you're dying.
Yeah.
You're either eating or you're being eaten. And the Pac-12 had the perfect opportunity to absolutely kill the Big 12. This time 2 years ago, when Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were leaving the Big 12, or I guess this time last year, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Either way, they had the opportunity. When Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were leaving the Big 12, the Big 12 was immediately on the ropes. The remaining 8 schools had to figure something out and figure something out quickly. And all the Pac-12 had to do was call Oklahoma State, TCU, and pick 2 other schools. Kansas State, Kansas, Tech, Baylor, whoever, or 6 of them, and say, come on.
Yeah.
And they would have jumped. They would have jumped so quickly, and the Pac-12 would not be in the situation that they are right now. They'd already have a new media rights deal. For certain, they would already have a new media rights deal. But instead, they didn't do that. I can't remember if Kliavkoff was there yet or if it was still
He
Larry
was.
Scott, but
No, it was Klykov.
and it's just it's still baffling to me that they didn't take advantage of that the way that they should have. And it's not surprising at this point in time that they are teetering like they are simply because of their lack of aggression and also because of the grenades that Brett Yormark has consistently been lobbing into their lap for the last year on the job.
Well, and in that note, not to quote a Garth Brooks song 5 minutes into the podcast, but let's just get there.
Serial killer Garth Brooks.
It's the unanswered prayer things. Like if you think about joining up with the Pac-12, which easily could have happened 2 years ago, making that agreement, then you are operating under a conference guided by George Kliavkoff, who's hasn't been a complete disaster compared to Larry Scott, but pretty damn close. Versus Brett Yormark, who have a article kind of touting his praises coming out tomorrow ahead of Big 12 Media Days on Frogs Inside on Patreon. But you're welcome. But somebody who has proven himself to be the most innovative commissioner in collegiate sports, who's proven himself to be among the most forward thinkers in athletics, period, who has done nothing but hit the ball out of the park in every aspect, whether that's advertising sales, whether that's marketing, whether that's taking the Big 12 international. I mean, there are going to be Big 12 games in Canada and Mexico, and it seems inevitable that more will be coming beyond football and basketball. But, you can absolutely see Big 12 soccer and Big 12 baseball, playing games in Mexico and other parts of the world. I wouldn't be shocked to see an overseas game, in the near future as well. And so, would you rather be tethered to, say, the Pac-12 survives and they get the Big 12's media rights, but you still have to operate in a world where, George Kliavkoff is your commissioner, or are you happy to be the Big 12, all things as is, with the commissioner who also announced on that 1 year anniversary that he intends to stay at 14 teams when Texas and Oklahoma leave for the Big 12. And so it seems like more moves are coming, which won't be a surprise to anybody with the flirting that's been going on with Gonzaga and UConn and other schools throughout the country. So I feel as good about the state of the Big 12 as I have since before Texas and Oklahoma left. And when it comes time for the next dominoes to fall, you have to think the Big 12 is positioned well behind, obviously the SEC and the Big 10, though they've had some issues, to have some level of stability, even if those two conferences try to shake things up even more. And I think a lot of schools around the country that are looking at exploring making a change would be very happy to answer a call from Brett Yormark in the Big 12 offices based on what they've seen him do in just 12 months' time.
Phones are probably going to be ringing sooner rather than later.
I agree.
I'd have to assume at this point, one way or another, right? Like the phones are going to be ringing. Does that mean that anybody's going to for sure jump ship soon? No, I don't think so. I think I'd take the same kind of line as the split zone duo guys do. Melissa, Richard Johnson, Stephen Godfrey, and Alex Kirshner. Great college football podcast, by the way.
Great
if you
job.
don't listen to them, split zone duo, where they say it's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen unless it actually happens.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to talk about. It's fun to joke about the Pac-12 dying, in my opinion, because of their foolishness for the last 2 years. It's fun to just have this kind of banter, especially this time of year in the off season. But if it happens, it happens, and that's cool. Do I think it's going to happen anytime soon? Not particularly, no. Especially with no deal in place. You're not going to leave a place without knowing what you're leaving first, because if by some grace of God the Pac-12 gets a number relatively close to the Big 12, I think that pretty much seals the deal on no expansion happening for the Big 12 as far as poaching Pac-12 schools goes.
You know what else? And just as somebody who, studied radio, TV, film in college and has a fascination with media, the other thing that's kind of hovering over all of this is that the streaming bubble is about to burst as well. With how spread out things are, with some teams are trying to manage their own streaming platforms. I think we're about to see a major shift in how people consume media and how we're already seeing how that impacts some of these media rights deals. But that's another thing where we're on the precipice of a major shakeup in that regard, because, cutting the cord was supposed to save people money, and now you're being asked to subscribe to 5, 8, 10, 12 different services in order to watch your favorite teams. And for those of us that maybe don't live in the same state as the school that we want to watch, especially when it comes to some of those, second tier, as far as, interest, like national interest sports, it's getting a lot harder and a lot more expensive to do. And so, again, this is where I'm Brett Yormark, because he comes out of the entertainment industry and he has a lot of experience in athletics as well, may have something cooking in that regard too, that I'll be interested to watch. When you look at some of the hires the Big 12 has made, I mean, we all get those press releases and everyone kind of glosses over them, but it's very clear that they're scaffolding for something bigger in the future when it comes to the way that they market their own teams and the way that they get beyond like a Longhorn network or a Pac-12 network. I think something bigger might be coming down the pipeline as well. And I'm going to be very thankful that Brett Yormark and his team are the ones that'll be behind making that happen.
I fully agree. I mean, at least in my house, we have the what are we subscribed to, what can we unsubscribe from conversation at least once a month. Trying to trim back and just make sure that all of a sudden we're not spending like $500 a month on subscription things. Yeah. But, it is what it is. And hopefully they'll get it all figured out because, West Coast football, whatever it looks like in the future, I would like to watch it. I know that much. So I need late night college football in the fall, or what am I going to do? Just go to bed at a reasonable hour? That's
you're gonna stream some high school girls 7-on-7, football. It's all right. We'll make sure you get your fix one way or the other. I promise.
Are you coaching?
I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
Should know soon.
Well, if you're coaching, I'm watching.
Okay.
If you're not coaching, feels creepy, won't be watching.
Yeah. Oh, so good fact. Fair fact.
So there's that. But let's go ahead and dive into the TC related content that people came for this evening. Let's start, Melissa, with some football conversation. The Big 12 released its all Big 12 preseason first team today, and there were 4 Horned Frogs on it. The number 4 is important, by the way, because that's tied with Kansas and Kansas State for the second most players on this preseason first team all Big 12 list.
What a weird sentence that is, by the way. What an unusual sentence to say. TCU is tied with Kansas State and Kansas.
Very weird.
For second most players on the all Big 12 team.
Texas obviously has the most because they're Texas. They've got 5. And frankly, they probably should this year have the most. It's hard to argue.
Yeah.
I know you filled out a ballot. I filled out a ballot. I think I had 4 of the 5 Texas players on my ballot. I also had all 4 of those TCU players plus a 5th TCU player as well. But we can get into that in just a minute. First, Dom Williams, Johnny Hodges, Josh Newton, and Griffin Kell all make the first team all Big 12. Melissa, are there any surprises to you out of that foursome?
No, I mean, I think those are the obvious ones, quote unquote. You've got Dom Williams, who, is moving to a new position, it appears, but, obviously showed what a dominant player he can be. And in a year where, it's not quite the depth at defensive line that it was a season ago, I think he's an obvious choice. Plus, he's a guy with a lot of personality. You saw a lot of him because of TCU's run. Absolutely inarguable to me that Josh Newton is a first team defensive back. He might be the best secondary player in the conference this year, and has a chance to be, I think, an All-American if he gets the opportunities. Johnny Hodges is the reigning newcomer of the year at linebacker. So I think that again, lack of real competition. Sorry, and I'm not sure if I'm looking at I'm looking at my personal list, and I kind of lost what you said, but that all of that seems to make a lot of sense. And then Griffin Kell as place kicker, again, just not a lot of experience behind him, and so it does seem to make a ton of sense that he would be the place kicker there. And again, hard to argue based off of what he did last year. He was absolutely exceptional, reigning player at that position. So no big surprises there. I mean, everything kind of, I had all 4 of those guys on my list, a couple additional ones. Weird to see, and I think we understand why, but very, very weird to see an first team offense without a single Horned Frog on it.
Yeah, I mean, you think about going into this time last year, Quentin Johnson was on that list. There were a couple other guys. I think Steve Avila was on that list as well. Darius Davis, I think, was the kick returner and punt returner on that list. And so, I mean, with all those guys going to the draft, all those guys graduating, it makes sense that TCU this year offensively
Sure.
doesn't have a guy on this list. Does that mean that's going to be the way at the end of the season? I don't think
I
it
don't think
will.
so.
I don't think it means that, but preseason lists are only as valuable as preseason lists can possibly be. You still got to go play some football. Who I'm interested to hear though, because I had one TCU guy on my ballot that didn't end up on the list. Who did you have from TCU that didn't end up on the first team?
So this is where I am unashamedly a little bit of a homer. When I fill these ballots out, I really do try to be as objective as possible. I don't, just vote straight ticket here.
Sure.
But there are a couple guys, and again, just based on there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns at marquee positions. And so if I'm not sure, I'm going to lean a little bit Horned Frog. And also you've got the team that's coming off of playing in the national championship. So all three of the guys I picked for offense are all newcomers. So absolutely no reason whatsoever to be able to justify this. I think I put Trey Sanders as a running back. I think I think he has a chance to be an all Big 12 level running back. And when you look again at there's going to be a lot of split carries across the conference and a lot of at that position. And so I think he's got an opportunity. I think that John Paul Richardson is going to be among the lead leaguers in total catches. Now, not total yards, but I think he could have a double-digit touchdown season. I just think the way that the offense is designed, he's going to have a lot of opportunity. And then just based on hearing you talk about him, it was weird to me to not put an offensive lineman from TCU on that list.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go with either of the guys who are getting kind of that love, the guys that are going to be seniors in the fall. And instead I went with the transfer and Willis Patrick, because I just think that
Okay.
he is going to surprise some people. He's an
Mm-hmm.
unknown. But I just think he's a really, really good fit at TCU, and he has a chance to kind of be that. You don't hear a lot about offensive linemen unless something bad happens or something really good happens. And I think we're going to hear a lot from him in the press conferences. He's going to be a guy that gets some opportunities to put his name out there. And it was just kind of my shot in the dark. So I went 6. It was too many. I felt guilty about a couple of them, but I'm also like, what the heck do I care? I'm going to go for it. There hundreds of people vote on these. I mean, obviously because they give both of us a ballot. So, it can't be that exclusive. So
It's true. It
yeah.
can't be that exclusive. I like the Willis Patrick selection. I have had the chance to meet him in person, and he is massive. He's a big human, very big human.
Yeah.
Will no doubt do well on the offensive line this year. Like I said, I had a 5th frog on my ballot. It was Brandon Coleman. I do think that Brandon's going to have a really good year for the Frogs. I think he ends up on one of these postseason All Big 12 teams, whether that's first or second, I don't know. I think maybe because you mentioned that both Coleman and Andrew Coker have been getting a lot of preseason love from various places. I wonder if folks kind of split the ballot
Yeah.
with both of them. I was a
That
little
makes sense.
surprised not to see either of them on the list, but I'm wondering now if some folks, just enough folks wrote in Coker, just enough folks wrote in Coleman that neither of them ended up with the number that they needed to get on the first team. But I also can't argue with the guys that did make the first team on the
Yeah.
offensive line. I mean,
Yeah.
all 5 of those dudes are dudes. So
Yeah.
especially Cooper Beebe and
Yeah.
Kelvin Banks Jr. Like those 2 dudes are awesome. I debated having Jared Wiley as my tight end, but then I remembered that Jatavion Saunders exists,
Yeah.
and you just can't. Like that would have been probably the most homerish thing that I did on my ballot is if I had gone with Wiley over Saunders. But
I also let the hype train just go crazy for Texas once again. Just let it give them all of the accolades, all of the things. I lied at the group text. I said that I had put Quinn Ewers as my QB1, forgetting that no, I'm stupider than that. I put Will Howard.
Nice.
I know, I also put him as my offensive player of the year because I'm a stupid person. I think I'm kind of trying to reverse jinx him if I'm being really honest. I just think of when you look, I know, but when you look at all of how few quarterbacks are returning that played a full season for their current team next year that have a year of Big 12 experience. I think the book might get out on Will Howard. Obviously, we saw what Alabama did to Kansas State, but right now I think he's probably the most consistent guy. And with another year in that offense and mostly a full year starting under his belt, I think he has a chance to have a big season. And I think Kansas State did a really nice job. I have Trayshawn Ward as my newcomer of the year. I think he's not gonna be Deuce Vaughn, but he's going to be really, really good for the Wildcats. And they have some really nice pieces. So I think he has a chance to have a big season. He's got a good offensive line. He's got a great weapon in Phillip Brooks, who could do, a lot of different things. And he's the kick returner for the conference. K-State's, much like Texas, is kind of in a put up or shut up year. And they're getting more recognition than we've seen Kansas State ever get. They also, I learned this week on social media that they've never had a 12-win season in their history. And so that was kind of surprised me. Like you don't ever think of, these great super elite Kansas State teams, but they've played in BCS games. They've had extended seasons. Kind of crazy to think they've never kind of topped that 12-win threshold. TCU hasn't done it since last year, so we'll see. But I think it's Kansas State, such an interesting position. I'm very interested to see what the poll comes out for the conference rankings, where Kansas State lies. I had them second behind Texas, and I think I have a feeling they'll be second or third, depending on what people think of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep my poll quiet until they release that list. We can talk about that on the next pod. Yeah. But I think we're probably pretty similar. We're probably pretty similar, at least at the top. I'm interested to see what the bottom half of your poll looks like, because I think it really is a total crapshoot.
It gets so bad.
It gets bad pretty quick this year in the Big 12. Honestly,
it really does.
And I said this. I was on a radio show in Tulsa earlier this week on Monday morning, and they were asking kind of about the wide openness of the Big 12, and I was like, I think that's partially why you're seeing. I mean, obviously Texas is always going to get a little bit of that legacy vote. But I think that's part of the reason there's so much Texas hype this year is you just kind of look at the Big 12 top to bottom, and it's just like, oh, I mean, I have no idea who's actually going to end up winning this conference. Do I think a team is going to come away clean and make it to the playoff? No, I don't, because I think that this is going to be an eat your own children kind of situation. Yeah. So, and from a TCU perspective, I think that's going to end up being pretty good because, in a year where you're quote unquote reloading, that's an opportunity to maybe hit a speed bump and still be in the running late in the season.
Yeah. Like you said, I don't know that if a team is going to make a run to the last year of the 4-team playoff, it has to be Texas, probably. I think they're the only one that are really positioned to be able to do that when you look at talent, depth, and schedule. It's going to be really hard for another team, to get through that slate, that 9-game conference slate without 1 or 2 losses. Just the schedule is messy. This 14 team, there's a lot of junk at the bottom. There's a lot of bad teams, but there's also a lot of bad teams that could rise up and beat you once or like they're a lot of those teams are. No one's not going to win a game. I'll put it that way. Like everybody's going to find, even Cincinnati's going to find a way to beat somebody they should. It's probably going to be like Texas Tech, like middle of November when they're 1 game out of first place or something to torpedo their season, which I think would be delightful. But, even Scott Satterfield's going to back into one, I think, this year. So it's fun. Like it's going to be even more fun the following year. Just, I think, and again, the way that things are positioned surrounding the conference, if the football can continue to be good and entertaining like it was last year, then we have a chance for a couple of really fun years and for the Big 12 to establish itself as, maybe not the elite conference in the land, but the one that you want to make sure that you tune into every week.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, this is kind of the most fun college football situation, is where every game feels like it matters.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're watching Alabama Vandy, like this game doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. If you're watching South Carolina Auburn, 9 times out of 10, that game doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I mean, Rutgers, Illinois, that game doesn't matter in the Big 10, but it feels like every game in the Big 12 is going to matter this year and beyond, which is super, super, super exciting. Other exciting things though, Melissa, Damion Baugh, we had questions about what was going to happen to him post-draft 2 episodes ago. Last episode, we had learned that he signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Los Angeles Lakers. If you want to know more about what an Exhibit 10 contract is, I would highly encourage you to go back to last week's episode and listen. We give you plenty of details on what an Exhibit 10 contract is in that episode. But either way, Damion Baugh signed that contract, has been working out with the Lakers Summer League team, and got his first minutes as a Los Angeles Laker, as a professional basketball player the other night up in Sacramento as a part of the Summer League bracket, I guess, that's happening up that
California
way.
Classic. Yeah.
Sorry, the California Classic. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
He did not start, but he had more minutes than anybody else off the bench with 24. He was the only bench player for the Lakers Summer League team to cross that 20-minute threshold, which is pretty cool. Played pretty well too. Yeah. Defense was the defense that we had come to love at TCU. Really good on the perimeter, long, getting in passing lanes, all that kind of stuff. He finished with 4 points on 2 of 6 shooting, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and only 2 turnovers. We know about his turnover struggles at TCU, so it was good to see him handle the ball a little bit. Made some really good passes that guys just missed. A couple open corner threes that he had some good court vision to find that kind of clanged off the rim. And also did a good job of drawing a couple fouls on drives to the rim. So overall, a really good first impression, in my opinion, for Damion Baugh in the league.
Yeah. And if you notice my eyes kind of flipping to the left here, it's because he's currently on the TV playing right now with the Lakers against San Antonio Spurs, and he's on the court. So I'm kind of trying to keep one eye on him. He's had back-to-back threes rim out, but yeah, I mean, he looks good. He looks like he belongs. I think he's a great candidate to stay with the Lakers G League affiliate. I don't know if he'll get a 2-way. I think they're out of 2-ways. We discussed that last time, but if he continues to play well and he could showcase some ability, like you said, to distribute, to handle the ball, cut down those turnovers, somebody's going to pick him up on a 2-way. I mean, he's got size. He can shoot it. He's playing great defense. He's rebounding the ball really, really well through these first 2 games. He had 3 rebounds in the first half tonight. And so I think he's doing what he needs to do to ensure that he can stay playing professional basketball stateside. Obviously getting a 2-way is the best path for him. But if not, I think he'll be with a G League affiliate and have a chance to work his way into maybe a 10-day contract and go from there.
Absolutely. And just, if he gets waived off his Exhibit 10 and doesn't get a 2-way, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's out altogether, because he can still be on a G League team, get that G League contract and work his way back up from there. So at this point, obviously it's super early. He's less than a game and a half into it. But he's, like you said, doing everything he needs to do at this point to, have some staying power, which I think we all are really, really pulling for him, because for sure. I mean, just a great human being overall, just a great human being. Damion Baugh is. So you love to see that from him. Yeah, that feels like a short basketball segment, but I'm okay with it.
We've got some basketball questions.
We do have some basketball questions. You're right. Yeah. We got some Twitter basketball questions. So we'll get back into hoops a little bit down the road. Melissa, baseball recruiting. You want to give us an update?
Yeah. So yeah, just gonna throw me. I mean,
I feel like I'm talking a lot this episode.
Yeah. No, it's all good. Listen, a lot of excitement. The one thing that we've seen, we know that TCU is going to lose some really critical pieces, some really impactful pieces. We also know that there's going to be a lot of roster turnover at the end of a season like this. Some of it has already been announced, and some of it is surprising me as I'm reading it right now, because I haven't been on Twitter much the last couple of days, not because of the rate limit, because of my 2 very young nieces. And turns out that, you don't get to scroll on Twitter a lot when you're watching 2-year-olds. It's really unfortunate.
That's true.
Or you're getting puked on or peed on, which are all things I experienced. But I will say that as I was scrolling this afternoon, getting ready for the show tonight, the one guy I did notice was Colt Taylor. And I think you had tweeted about him. You did a great article on him for 247 for Horned Frog Blitz, where you do your writing now. And I was watching. So of course I immediately go to his Twitter account, like, okay, let's get it. And I saw the release point, JB, and I'm in love.
Yeah.
I love a submariner. I love a sidearm. I love a low arm slot. I love a guy that just gives you a different look. I'm assuming he's going to be a guy that comes out of the pen. I think being able to mix up a batter and change their eye level at the plate is so critical in college baseball. And this dude seems like he's going to be a lot of fun. He's not the biggest name that TCU got out of the portal. Colt Taylor out of Tennessee Tech. Hopefully he's not the last guy out of Tennessee to come to TCU. I'll let you talk about that in a minute. But Peyton Toll is probably the big one, right? The two-way player out of Wichita State. I saw that kind of blew up towards the end of last week. This is a big get. I think not a lot of people probably know much about Wichita State baseball. This is a kid who bats for a high average. He's got a lot of power. So, showed a little bit of pop there. He's really good athlete. And then he can also pitch. And we've seen kind of the rise of the two-way player once again in the college game on the heels of what Shohei Ohtani is doing in Major League Baseball. This kid looks like he's for real. And you probably have a little bit more information if you kind of want to fill us in on some of the details there.
The best and all right, this is gonna make people think things, and it's not a direct comparison by any stretch of the imagination. The best TCU comp I have right now for Peyton Tolle is he is a left-handed Luken Baker. Woo. So you think about so the power numbers aren't quite there, right? Luken is a generational power hitter, but when you think about two-way player who pitches really well, can hit for power, mostly a DH first baseman. Also, I mean, Tolle numbers wise, like size wise, is almost right there. He's 6'6", 250, right? Like he's big boy, throws hard, hits hard, right? Like those are the kind of guys you want. And I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking with. It might have been Martin Guerrero over at the Lupton podcast. LSU, look at LSU's like physical build of that squad this year. They looked like a softball beer league team. And I mean, you need some big boys who can mash and some big boys that can throw the baseball hard. And Peyton Tolle checks both of those boxes for TCU. He was an excellent player at Wichita State. He had a significant number of suitors in the transfer portal. I'm talking 20 to 30 at least, schools reaching out to him, asking him to come play. A lot of those schools wanted him to play one way, which kind of crossed them off his list right away. When I had the chance to talk to him, though, I think the biggest thing that is going to help TCU next year with him on the team is the fact that he is 100% fully bought into the culture that Kirk Saarloos is building at TCU. Tolle turned down significant NIL dollars elsewhere to come to TCU. Significant NIL dollars to come to TCU. He is not getting that same number, as far as I know, from TCU that he would have been getting elsewhere. But he came to TCU because he saw Kirk Saarloos' vision. He saw the opportunity to play both ways, and he saw a culture that he wanted to be a part of, which is a really cool thing because in this quote unquote day and age, to sound like an old man, there is so much conversation about, student athletes are just going to go to the highest bidder. If you have the biggest NIL budget, you're in the best shape, which, largely is true. There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, LSU probably has the largest baseball NIL budget in college baseball right now. And lo and behold, they won.
Yeah. They bought a title. Yeah.
Congratulations, right? Like they followed the Yankees blueprint, which worked 27, 28 times. So, if you've got the money, spend it, right? It's not my money. I don't care. But it is nice to know, it is refreshing to know that there is still a space in college athletics where culture can ultimately win out. And that's not to say that TCU is not in good shape from an NIL perspective. They're in great shape from a baseball NIL perspective. Great shape. Sometimes we get into the comparison, the grass is greener thing with schools like LSU and Tennessee and Arkansas. And we're like, oh man, our NIL budget isn't that big. Oh, well, it's maybe not the biggest when you're comparing it to the three biggest NIL baseball budgets in the country. But I can assure you TCU's in the top 10, if not higher.
Well, the other thing with those three universities is those are public universities that are charging public tuition. And so it's, the dollar goes farther for a lot of those schools than it does at TCU, where it's going to cost you some portion of $70,000 to go to school too. So I mean, it's an arms race that TCU isn't going to win, but if they're in the top 10 and competitive, and you've got a culture that can attract people, and you have a history of winning, you're a quote unquote new blue blood, and you have a coach and a staff that people want to play for, and a fan base that's pretty rabid and pretty excited about you. I think TCU is in outstanding shape. And I mean, we've seen in 2 years that Kirk Saarloos can work the transfer portal about as well as anybody, and is not only targeted elite players, but elite players at position of need in a way that's been really, really effective. When you look at the guys that are signing in, the guys that are rumored to be interested, it's really, really cool to kind of think back to 23 and 20 and to see how that kind of that wave and that shift and not just in success, but in the feeling and the vibes around the team obviously was noticed by guys outside of the program in a way that is making them want to be like you said, to come be a part of something really special and really unique. And it really just shows you, when you build it the right way, that it doesn't matter what obstacles you're up against, you can build success. And you could go out and buy a natty. And if you told me tomorrow that TCU was going to buy a natty, I'd be totally okay with it. But it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this team kind of come together again and build hopefully towards a return to Omaha.
Absolutely. They've beyond Tolley too, right? They got a kid from Pepperdine and Jack Basir, who's coming in as a corner infielder who also fits that mold. Good culture guy. Had a chance to catch up with him on the phone. He's a really interesting kid. Things at Pepperdine just didn't work out because sometimes things at schools don't work out the way you want them to. And he saw an opportunity to come to TCU and get back to his natural position, which is third base. So I think that's going to benefit both him and TCU next year and the years beyond, because he's got 3 years left to play. Tolley has 2 years left to play, but he's probably he's probably a first round, second round pick in the MLB draft next year. So it's like, guys draft eligible, you're getting him for 1 year, you're getting a great two-way player. Just be thankful for that, and then celebrate the fact that everywhere he goes professionally, it's going to say TCU on his profile. There's a kid, I can't say his name right now, but there is a silent commit for TCU baseball currently, who is going to announce soon. I've got all the stuff written, like we are so frequently these days, waiting on an edit. So as soon as that happens, TCU fans will be very excited about this kid. Very excited. No hints other than that, but they'll be very excited. So a little tease there. Keep your eyes on the Twitter machine or on, I don't know, Threads.
Yeah, I guess Threads
in the near future.
Instagram,
right? I guess I set up a Threads profile earlier today.
I did too.
It's an interesting thing. They got to fix that news feed a little bit because there's no sorting mechanism right now, and that's driving me a little nuts. But it's good to have, I guess, a backup for if Twitter finally does go in the tank. But anywho, keep your eyes to socials over the next couple of days, folks, because there should be another fun baseball announcement coming soon. It might be happening as you listen to this episode on Thursday. Who knows? I don't know the timing of it. I've just got stuff ready just in case. But I think the thing is with TCU baseball, the summarization, the TLDR is they're in great shape. Obviously, the draft is going to have a lot to do with how many more portal guys they bring in. But if you keep track of how many guys they've brought in versus how many guys are draft eligible, you can kind of start to get a picture of what TCU coaching staff is expecting as far as guys that are going to go pro and guys that are going to come back. A couple of notes, just some updates on guys that are leaving the program that aren't draft eligible. David Bishop hit the portal a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, not surprising, but such a bummer. I just hate that it didn't work out for him.
It does suck. It does suck, right? Because I mean, he had such a good start to his freshman year. Everybody was super hyped about him. And then the second half, he hit that freshman wall that so many guys hit. The off-speed pitches really gave him problems. It felt too, just from a mental standpoint, like that called strike 3 to end that game against West Virginia, his freshman year, what he thought was a ball. I think that really got in his head a little bit, and he was not the same after that. And you could tell that he wasn't seeing the baseball in the zone as well, pretty much from that point on, which is disappointing. And then you had a guy like Cole Fontenelle come in, play really good defense at first base, and he was hitting the cover off the ball. And, you got to do what's best for the team at that point. And so Bishop hits the portal. I don't have any insider knowledge on this. I think a place like Georgia Tech would be a great fit for
Mhm.
him, right? Closer to home, Power Five program,
Yeah, really smart kid.
smart kid, right? Like good opportunity there. Maybe at Georgia Tech. Georgia's got a new head coach as well. Maybe he gets on at Georgia. I don't know, but
Yeah.
you know,
I think a fresh start,
yeah,
obviously just closer to home. I don't think this is the last we'll hear of David Bishop as a successful collegiate baseball player. It's unfortunate that's going to happen somewhere else, but he certainly is. I want to see him succeed, man. He was so good as a true freshman. He came in that position and really stabilized it. So wish the best for him. Hope he's not in the Big 12.
yeah, for sure. Other guys that are hitting the portal, Owen Blackledge, Lil Ledge, as he was lovingly known on the baseball team, roommates with Trey Richardson and Elijah Nunez this year.
Oh gosh.
The ultimate hype man, right?
Yeah.
If you ever wondered who number 35 was, first guy out of the dugout to celebrate with his teammates, first guy to welcome the defense back off the field after that half inning, that was Owen Blackledge, son of Todd Blackledge,
Yeah.
former ESPN guy. But is now looking for a place to go and play a little bit more. So you got to wish him the best. Murphy Brooks, we all know Murphy from the fall,
Yeah.
falling ill as he got on campus, recovering from that. Fully healthy, fully ready to play, gained a ton of really good weight back. Saw him about a month ago. He looked really fit, looks in shape, looks ready to rock. He's committed to Louisiana now, so he's going to go play for the
Great.
Raging Cajuns next year.
Good.
River Ridings is in the portal after kind of working his way out of
Bummer
that
too.
closer role
Yeah.
that he started last season as. And then Justin Hackett also in the portal, a rising sophomore pitcher. And then Cal Marley, a rising sophomore as well, is not transferring out, but he is retiring from baseball and will continue to be a student at TCU.
Good for him.
So he's going to hang out at TCU, still be around.
Can't blame him.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna step away from baseball and make the hard decision to do that, why also change schools and go to a new place, right? Like your people here. It's a great place to be.
Yeah.
So best of luck to Cal and all that he chooses to do from here on out.
It's really hard to argue, especially with kids at TCU with how expensive tuition is and how much of an investment they're generally making out of pocket to play there with the baseball scholarship limits. If you've got an opportunity to go somewhere else and play, I think TCU baseball fans tend to get that too. It's not a bad look for the program that these guys are leaving. It doesn't say anything negative about Kirk Saarloos, TJ Bruce, anybody else.
Yeah.
I know exactly why you're smirking too, because I think you just read the text I sent.
I
did. Yep. The little behind inside baseball guys for you. So
it'll be outside baseball soon enough.
Yeah, it'll be outside soon. But it's a bummer. But when you look at the quality of people that they have, the quality of people that they're bringing in, let these guys go and get a chance to play, and make their investment pay off elsewhere. So that's good. River Ridings is going to make me sad forever. Like that one's just going to make me sad forever. But everybody, I get it. Like I really want him to be successful, and he's certainly earned that as well.
Look, I mean, I vividly remember. So it was January of 22. I had a chance to sit down with Kirk Saarloos before his first season as head coach. He was willing to sit down and do like a 30-minute on the record conversation to help preview the team. And I remember like having done some research before going in to talk to him. First time I had really sat down and had a long conversation with him. And looking at the roster and thinking River Ridings is really the only lefty in the bullpen on this thing. And just thinking how critical he was going to be to that season. And he was for a really long time.
Yeah.
But I remember asking Kirk about it too. I was like, do you have concerns about really just having one lefty out of the bullpen? And he said, yeah, we're going to, in the future, kind of try and build up, have more lefties available. And, not necessarily to have more situational pitching, but just it's good to have a balance in this day and age when you're trying to, like you said earlier with Colt Taylor, changing eye levels, changing, where the ball's coming from. And we saw how effective a lefty out of the bullpen can be this year in Ben Abelt. But I mean, you look at now going into next year in the 24 season, the left-handed pitching that TCU is going to have on this team. Okay, well, you start with Ben Abelt, Chase Hoover, and Braden Sloan, all of whom are rising sophomores, three pretty dang good lefties. You add Peyton Tully to that mix. You add first team all Big 12 left-handed pitcher Ben Hampton from West Virginia, right? So there's five now. And you have the potential for Kyle Carr, the Palomar Junior College kid, to get on campus too. Really hard throwing lefty who will probably go high enough in the draft not to make it to campus, but he is committed to TCU in case the draft doesn't go his way, right? So you shift in just 2 off seasons, really 1 off season, from not many lefties to a really good balance of lefties and righties. Um, you might even argue that there's more left-handed pitching depth on the team right now than right-handed pitching depth, depending on obviously how everything else turns out. But Chase Burns is still out there uncommitted. It should be noted too. I forgot to put this in the notes. Chase Burns is expected to visit TCU soon, so that's really all. That's really all the update I've got on Chase Burns. I don't expect him to make a decision in the near future. He is going to take his visits. He's going to do his due diligence as he should.
Yeah, as he should.
He's a 3.8 GPA guy. He throws 102 miles an hour. I would be shocked if his phone has stopped ringing at this point.
Yeah.
So, but it's good news for TCU that they're going to get him on campus.
Yeah,
so
get him on campus.
Really good.
That's all you can ask for.
I mean, look, you talk about all these guys that have committed so far. Pretty much every single one of them has visited, and several of them have committed on the spot, right? Like Tully committed before he left campus. I'm fairly certain, right? He committed in time for TJ Bruce to hug him. I know that much. So, you get guys on campus here, and that speaks to the kind of place that TCU is. When you get a guy on campus, you feel pretty good about your chances to land him. And that goes for not only baseball, but basketball, for football, for every other sport. If you can get a kid to take a visit, you feel pretty good about your chances to get him to commit.
We both did. But we don't get to.
It's true.
Yeah. I could, I visited and immediately knew that's where I was going to go to school, and no one was recruiting me, but and it was a long time ago, but whatever. It's neither here nor there.
It's neither here nor there. Got a couple more updates for folks before we get into our Twitter and Instagram questions for tonight. Some very sad news happened earlier on Wednesday afternoon before we recorded. Brian Brazil, former TCU football player, longtime Texas high school football coach, spent a long time at Hebron High School in the DFW area, had recently become the athletic director at Prestonwood Christian Academy, passed away. I believe it was on Wednesday, after a quick and pretty significant battle with cancer. Everywhere you go in the Texas high school football landscape, it's a family. It's a very interconnected space. Brian Brazil's fingerprints were all over Texas high school football over the last 30 plus years. Very sad loss for his family, first and foremost, for his friends, first and foremost, also for the Texas high school football community and for the TCU community as a whole. So prayers to his family and his friends, those that knew him and loved him and cared about him. This is a difficult time for them. So we're thinking about them right now after his passing, because he meant a lot to a lot of people. But we also have another update on Bram Kohlhausen, Melissa, if you want to kind of give us an update. It feels like things are maybe turning in a good direction for him.
I think that Bram obviously has a long road ahead of him, and is somebody who, played at an elite level and, had so many amazing moments on an athletic field. He's going to have to adjust to kind of a new way of life. But there was an article in the Star Telegram earlier this week with just an update kind of coming from Bram's, representatives, his family, his friends. It does look like he's lost both of his feet. There's amputation mid calf on both of his legs. I know that rumor was going around, and then people were saying it wasn't what happened, but that has been confirmed. And so that is obviously going to be a significant change as far as his lifestyle, the way that he goes about living. But it seems that is kind of the worst of it. And if you want to say that's a silver lining, I think it certainly is. Mentally, it looks like he's got his full capabilities. He's laughing, he's joking with friends, he's FaceTiming, he's texting, he's doing all of those things. That's really, really good news. They've moved him out of the intensive care unit where he was originally taken for a deep trauma unit, military trauma unit. He's now kind of in a rehab facility, which should mean that his prognosis is positive and he shouldn't have to have any more major surgeries from this point forward. So it's been a long road for Bram, but it looks like there's a lot of reason for hope going forward. I know the TC community has really rallied around him and his family and will continue to do so. I think we're all hopeful that Bram is at a point where he can talk to people at some point directly, whether it's over social media or something else. But I think that it looks like things are trending upward for him in a lot of ways. And while his life will be different, it seems like his quality of life is still going to be able to be relatively high. And that's great news for him and his family and friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, 99% of the time, people who experience what he experienced don't make it.
Yeah.
So the fact that he is alive, the fact that he is doing as well as he's doing is nothing short of a miracle, frankly. So very excited for Bram that he is on the long road to recovery. And we know that the TCU community will be with him every step of the way.
And listen, when he's ready, he better be a give him hell TCU. He better.
Oh, when he's ready. If he's not, that's the biggest mistake the university's ever made.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's dive in as we kind of close out this episode, Melissa, to some Twitter and Instagram questions. We asked you guys for questions. First time we've done that since we've been the Frogs Insider podcast. I felt the urge, so we got to get rolling.
It's also dangerous. It's very dangerous.
It is dangerous
with the people that follow us. It can be very concerning.
Yes, but we got some really good questions both on Twitter and Instagram. I will posit the same opportunity to the Threads community next week as well for the show.
Guess I got to get my profile finished.
Get that profile finished so we can interact with Threads. I mean, just might as well, right?
Yeah,
it's just who cares? It's one more social media platform.
Sure.
I'm on like 40 at this point.
Yeah, it's like cut the cord. It just gets worse.
Yeah, but at least I mean, I'm not paying for verification on any of these things, so it's free for me, I guess, for now. But anyways, we're diving in to some Twitter questions. I'm just going to read them in order that I see them. It's not necessarily the order that they came in, but Eric Sorensen at Eric Sports 360 Arizona asks, besides Dom Williams, who are the main candidates to step up on the defensive line? In parentheses, easily the biggest concern area on defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that that's probably, I don't know if concern, but question. I would put a lot of questions there. But there's certainly some talent. I mean, it's not like we're devoid of talent. It's more like who's going to step up. You get Tymon Mitchell back. You talked about him, I think, last week. There's some young guys that certainly have some potential. You look at Paul Oyewale, who there was a lot of positive buzz coming out of him, his true freshman season in fall camp. Like, he's a great athlete. You've got some veteran guys, and Sonny Misi's still around, isn't he? I think.
Yep.
He's still around. You've got Caleb Fox is still around, correct? So some guys that kind of had some spot duty that could step up. There are some pieces that could kind of come together, but I think it's right to have some questions. Who's kind of who are you looking at as a candidate? Oh, you've got one. You're so ready.
No, you were mad at me earlier for teasing a silent commitment.
Yeah.
He just texted me and said, "Hey man, I'm about to post my commitment. And since this isn't going live anywhere until tomorrow, I can go ahead and tell you that, how do I say his last name? Peyton Chatagnier, the longtime second baseman at Ole Miss, has committed to TCU. He actually committed to the Frogs on Monday. Wanted to take his time. He was on vacation when he committed. And he also wanted to make sure that he called all the other head coaches who had been recruiting him out of the portal to let them know about his decision before he made it public that he was committing to TCU. So really cool, really big get for TCU. This is one of those commitments too, that if you are paying attention to who TCU baseball is recruiting from the portal, and you are looking at the list of players who are draft eligible for TCU this year, which the draft is happening in days. We'll probably talk mostly about who goes in the draft on the next episode. You can start to draw some conclusions about who's going and who's coming back. So obviously it's not a given that Peyton's going to play second base at TCU, but he did say earlier today when I talked to him on the phone that was his goal, was to be the starting second baseman. And he's super excited to be at TCU. Another guy who committed to TCU for the culture. Another guy who committed because of the coaching staff. He made a joke that he's like, I took a ton of visits and there was not a single visit like TCU. There was no other place where a coach came out in flip-flops, a Hawaiian collared t-shirt with his golden retriever running around, who was laid back and relaxed and fun. And he's like, you can't beat that environment. So Peyton is another Horned Frog, the second transfer portal kid named Peyton, spells it with an E instead of an A, like Tully. And
Here's
so
what
that's a big addition for
yeah.
TCU.
Here's what I love is this is a kid who has been on the mountaintop. He's won a national championship, right? And so this is when you look at TCU trying to get over the hump, having somebody that has experienced winning in Omaha, I think is a huge deal. I think having that championship mentality, knowing what it takes to win at that high level and being able to kind of imbue that on all of these transfers and some of these younger players that are going to step up. I think it could be huge just again as another builder in that culture around the Horned Frogs and another piece that they could kind of help them take that next step and get over the hump. So yeah, that's great. Very exciting. Thank you, Peyton, for going ahead and texting Jamie during our podcast so that we could announce that and I wouldn't be left wondering, because when Jamie says it was a silent commit, like I tried to goad it out of him in the chat and he wouldn't do it. So
no,
this is a man of integrity. He's a man of his word.
I keep my promises. Let it be known, I keep my promises. Melissa, do you want to run the next Twitter question for us?
Yeah. So our friend, I think I've talked to this guy before. He's really just gets very involved on Twitter. It's kind of weird. Colin Post, I think is his name. Weird dude. He had some questions about some current and former TC players. One of them was Damion Baugh. We already talked about him at length, so I think we're good. Colin wants to know what Mike Miles' ceiling is in Dallas, and is Jameer Nelson Jr. The replacement for Mike? I think that the roster construction in Dallas is going to make things interesting for Mike Miles, but I think, like we've talked about previously, Kyrie hasn't played a full season in quite a while for various reasons. I would not be surprised at all if Mike spends a considerable amount of time on the roster in Dallas and dressed out to play. I also think he's one of those guys that his skill set is going to transfer to the NBA as far as being able to come off the bench, create offense, and be a playmaker. His playmaker ratings weren't great, and I think that's part of the reason that he went undrafted, but we've seen him at TCU do things within the flow of the game that maybe go a little bit underrated. And so, I think his ceiling is member of the roster full time, getting, meaningful minutes off of the bench. I don't see any reason why he couldn't be a guy that averages double digits off the bench for a really long time in the league. I think down the line, there could be an opportunity for him to be a starter. Jameer Nelson Jr. is a replacement. I think replacing Mike Miles is probably too heavy a load to put on Jameer Nelson Jr.'s shoulders. I think that he will provide a lot of the offensive firepower that we saw in Mike. He's a little, he's not that much bigger than Mike. He's another kind of smaller guard, if I remember correctly. I think that he will be the right transition from Mike to keep TCU competitive in the Big 12 and help make them, hopefully a tournament team for a third consecutive year. But I don't know that I would be willing to call him a full replacement. Anything to add on any of that?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say anybody's going to come in and just replace Mike Miles. I mean, you're talking about one of the best scorers in the history of the program, one of the best overall guards in the history of the program. They are similar sizes. Nelson's also listed at 6'1", so they're about the same size. I wouldn't be surprised if Jameer has slightly longer arms than Mike does, but he definitely has the game that is the closest comparison on this current roster to Mike. And you need a guy like that who, when you need a bucket, he can go get a bucket. He's going to be one of the primary ball handlers on the team. He's going to protect the basketball. He's got good court vision. He's got good assist numbers. He's going to get his teammates involved, and he's not going to hurt you on the defensive side of the basketball either. So, I mean, he is as close to a complete player as TCU has right now from a guard perspective. But I think truly, I mean, it feels crazy to say this, losing Mike and Damion in the same offseason and Hade, but TCU's guard depth is in a really good spot right now. When you think about Jameer plus Trey Tennyson, who's a 40% three-point shooter coming up from A&M Corpus, plus Avery Anderson, who's probably the fastest guy on the team.
Yeah. Great
in transition, elite defender. Do you want a fourth guard in that mix? Probably. Could that be Jace Posey? Possibly. I don't know how much playing time these freshmen are going to find for themselves this year. And there is still the possibility that TCU goes out and gets another guard in the portal. A couple have entered late in the cycle here that they might go and give that 13th scholarship to. The other option is giving that scholarship to Tyler Lundblade, who transferred over from SMU. left a scholarship at SMU to come and walk on at TCU, and has been arguably the hardest worker on the team ever since he stepped foot on campus. So rewarding a guy like that, who's also, frankly, a very underrated 3-point shooter, might be the way to go for TCU, depending on how they feel out the portal kind of moving forward. I do think, though, that TCU is in a really good position to once again kind of finish in that top quadrant of the conference as far as basketball is concerned. It gets a little harder with Houston in the mix now as well, but I see no reason for the Frogs to be moving backwards at this point.
Yeah, agreed. I'm gonna jump in and go 2 in a row here.
Yeah.
The TCU burner has some really interesting questions. Will the absence of Dylan Horton cause Gillespie to run significantly more linebacker pressures? How is the QB room currently faring behind Morris? Dylan Wright versus Savion Williams, who will be better? And then the best part of his question is the last one: what uniquely sadistic way will we find to beat Baylor this year?
I'm going to start with the final point of that.
Of course.
Think that,
yeah.
So obviously there's not much better than beating your rival on a last second field goal to preserve your undefeated season. And crush their hopes and dreams on their home field. Like, that is like the pinnacle for sure. I will say that it's even more fun to make them feel like they never had a shot, right? Like, when you run out of fireworks against Texas Tech, like, that was one of the most euphoric feelings I've had as a TCU fan. As someone who wants to write that story again, that would be pretty cool to do that against Baylor this upcoming season and say, yeah, TCU for the second time in their history ran out of fireworks, absolutely beating the brakes off of the Baylor Bears. I don't want anyone to get fired because I like Dave Aranda, but having your rival reeling on their heels, asking really existential questions after you beat them, it's a good feeling.
I think that Blake Shapen has among the most slappable faces in all of college athletics. And so I kind of piggybacking off of you, I would like there to be an image, and I would like to take this photo personally of him sitting on the bench in front of the TCU student section with a single tear rolling down his cheek, because he has been so utterly and completely destroyed and humiliated by TCU's defense. Josh Newton has like 3 interceptions. Shad Banks gets another one just because that's what he does against Baylor, right? I think like something like 70 to like 3, and Blake Shapen gets pulled in like the middle of the second quarter because it's just been that bad of a day for him. I'm with you. Dylan Wright, I keep forgetting Dylan Wright is on the roster. Like, this is a pretty nice piece that TCU went and got. And when you talk about all the other wide receivers that TCU has gotten out of the portal, I think I tend to forget that he is one of the more marquee names that they went and signed. Who's gonna, let's do it this way: who's gonna have more receptions? Who's gonna have more touchdowns?
Dylan Wright or who?
Savion Williams.
I don't know. My instinct right there was that Savion Williams is going to have more receptions, yards, and touchdowns. I think that there is value in being a part of a system. I think there's value in being on campus when you're learning how new stuff's being installed. Dylan Wright wasn't here in the spring, so I think that puts him kind of behind the 8 ball as far as when he does get on campus. Learning the playbook's going to be a priority. Do I think that he ends up a really significant part of this offense? Yes, but I give Savion the edge simply because he's here. He's been working. He understands what's expected of him. And also, right, like, he's kind of the next man up.
Yeah.
He's been Quentin's number 2 guy for the last 3 years. It's his turn. And I don't think he's going to let that opportunity go to waste. And so when you talk about a guy who's really kind of primed to have a huge season, we've talked a lot about John Paul Richardson this offseason. I think Savion Williams is primed to have an absolutely banger of a year for TCU football.
Man, I hope so. I would love to see him have the breakout that we've all been kind of waiting for him to have. That being said, I feel like he hasn't, and again, he's been overshadowed by Quentin Johnson and other players. I think Dylan Wright's going to end up with more yards I think Savion Williams is going to have more touchdowns. I'm going to go Savion with more catches too.
Okay. I think that's totally reasonable.
Yeah. It'll be close. I think it'll be close. And if Savion Williams has like 9 touchdowns this year, TCU's probably in a pretty good position.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's that'd be a good number for the Horned Frogs.
Yes, I agree. I think that's really fair. Just so you know, Peyton's commitment post just went up on Twitter as well. So everyone go and love that. Tell him that he's part of the best baseball program in the country, because he might be, going into
he might be
going into next year. I am trying to find where my post just went so that I can tweet that out.
While you're doing that, I'll go ahead and vamp for you.
Thank you.
Tommy chimes in, who should have been on the preseason Big 12 team or who was not on the preseason Big 12 team that should have from TCU. I think we covered that. Are either of you concerned at all about TCU having the 50th ranked recruiting class right now, coming off the Natty runner-up season? I think we've talked a lot about TCU's kind of recruiting strategy, the way they've gone about when that bump is going to come. I've been really happy with what we've seen so far, especially when you look ahead to kind of 2025. TCU is going to be very intentional with who they offer and who they sign. You've talked about that quite a bit as well. They've had a lot of camps. They've seen a lot of guys. Actually kind of getting those offers collected in the way that you want, it can be a time-consuming process. If there's one thing we know as TCU fans, it's that recruiting is never going to start the way that we want it to. But it's not about how you start, it's how you finish. I mean, Texas Tech had the #1 recruiting class for quite a while last year because of sheer volume. TCU is not in a position where they need to volume offer. They need to find, much like TCU baseball, they need to find the right guys to fill the holes that they're anticipating having. And they're using a lot of transfer portal to do so. And those don't factor into the high school recruiting rankings, of course. So I'm not concerned yet. I will say that the only thing that would concern me would be a big step backwards this year, followed by a poor recruiting class in 2024. And I don't anticipate that happening. So I'm not worried. TCU staff has shown that they can close. You've got some of the best and brightest and most relatable young minds, for that program. And so I feel really good about what they're going to be able to do, not just this year, but going into the future, regardless of kind of that national championship bust or not bust, burst. Yeah.
Burst.
Wasn't the word I was looking for. Yeah. Bump was the word I was looking for. Yeah.
There you go. I'm going to be honest with you. I was tweeting out that article. Which question was that?
That was, are we worried about the shape of TC's recruiting ranking? He said 50th, which I don't think is correct.
It's higher than that now too. It's in the 30s, I believe, at this point. Let me double check. Obviously, there are differences between 24/7 and On3 and ESPN and Rivals. They all have their own numbers. It is 54 on 24/7 right now. I guess other commitments have kind of bumped that back down again. No, I'm not concerned. Yeah. I'm not concerned. I did hear you kind of in my subconscious mention the transfer portal and the guys that they brought in, and you're right? Like how you construct a team at the college level is wildly different now than it has been ever before. And so you have to kind of take into account who are the older guys that they've brought in to kind of shore up some positions that maybe they were worried about. And when you look at the guys that they have in this class, I mean, this is some incredible talent. Kyle Baker, I think, is going to end up as one of the highest ranked wide receivers in the state, if not the country. Jeremy Payne is going to he's already the number 20 running back in the country. I think he's going to end up higher than that. Haas Haney just showed out at Elite 11, put a lot of guys on his name. Like he's becoming a much more well-known commodity across the college football landscape now. I mean, he jumped, I believe it was 150 positions in the latest 24/7 rankings update, right? That only equated to moving up one spot at quarterback from 16 to 17 or from 17 to 16. But still, I mean, he's jumping a lot of guys right now in the rankings. His rating is going up. And then guys that have been committed for a long time, like Travis Jackson, Tobias Steps, Ryan Hughes, like these guys are kind of the core that you want to have. Those are guys that TCU went out and found as well. I think this is a really good class. you also have to remember that part of these rankings are based on number of commits that you have, not necessarily the quality of commit that you have. And so with 24/7 especially, you get a little bit of a bump when you have 14, 15, 16 guys committed at this point versus the 8 or 10 like TCU has right now. So it's a long game. It's a long recruiting cycle. We're still 5 months away from National Signing Day, early signing day. TCU has a lot of good guys that are close, I think, right now. They're in the race for a lot of really quality players right now. It is way too early, way too early to hit the panic button on TCU recruiting for football for 2024.
Agree. We're getting pretty long here. Should we rapid fire a couple of these last questions here?
Let's do it.
Okay. Rapid fire. Will we have a repeat performance of last year's TCU football season? It was so much fun. James Moore asked that. It'll be fun.
It'll be tough to do exactly what they did last year, but it was tough to do it last year.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it'll still be fun. I don't think we're going to play for a national championship 2 years in a row. Could be wrong. Our buddy Yell MK, speaking of fireworks coming off the 4th of July, should Schollmeyer Arena replicate the scoring celebration of Amon G and shoot off a couple of bottle rockets into the rafters every time Emmanuel Miller drains his 3? This is an easy one. Yes.
I will gladly buy a bunch of bottle rockets and just fire them off from the press section.
Yeah,
perfect. I don't think Stephen Schoen would mind at all.
No, not one bit.
Mind at all.
Not one bit. Will Chase Burns pitch on Friday or Saturdays for TCU next season? Our friend Martin wants to ask that.
If he's committed to TCU, he's going to be starting on Fridays.
Yell comes back with one more question. Rank them. Torchy's, Fuzzy, Salsa Limon, Velvet Taco says purposely leaving out the legit Mexican taquerias because it's a different genre of food. Could not agree with him more. Jamie, what's your ranking?
I think that you could split those 4 choices into 2 different genres of taco as well. But since they're all clustered together, I'm going to go, and I'm going to get heat for this. I don't care. Fuzzy's, Torchy's, Salsa Limon, and then Velvet Taco. You can just miss me altogether.
I said rapid fire, but I'm stunned, speechless. Yeah, Velvet Taco, overrated. Sorry, no offense, not bad. Unless you want to sponsor us, and then you become our number one. I mean, Salsa Limon is probably the best quality, but man, like I miss Fuzzy's queso. I really miss Fuzzy's queso, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. So that I will be eating Fuzzy's when I'm in town next week for Big 12 Media Days.
There you go.
And if I'm going to go to one of those places, and I'm only going to go to one, I'm probably going to Fuzzy's. So I guess that's my answer. Let's see. Oh, and then did we get any on Instagram? You got any Instagram for us?
Yes, we had a couple on Instagram. All right,
let's rapid fire a couple, and then we'll finish with my Adam.
Here, I've got 2 over under Tim on Twitter from my retweet of my original tweet. Over under 7.5 wins this fall if you happen to be into that kind of thing.
Oh, are we counting a bowl game?
You tell me.
Let's count a bowl game so that I can safely pick the over.
I'm taking the over without a bowl game.
Wow. Okay.
You look at TCU's schedule. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they start 7-0, going up to Manhattan for that matchup in mid-October. And then another one is TCU's basketball roster completely filled out? That's from Charles G. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. They still do have one more scholarship available. What they do with it is still kind of up in the air, whether they bring in another portal guy, give it to a walk-on on the team, or just kind of let it ride. They've been letting that 13th scholarship ride the last few years. Next, Jackson Johnson on Twitter asks, how can the TCU defense improve to at least the top 30 in the nation, Melissa?
Oh, I mean, I think it's just going to be one more year in the system executing at a high level. What's really going to be the difference maker is, can they get pressure on the quarterback? I mean, that's been kind of the secret sauce when TCU has been elite defensively, no matter who the coach is. It's because they've been able to get pressure. They've really struggled to do that with consistency over the last couple of years. So I think it came on pretty strong at the end of last season. This will be a better and more efficient unit. I don't know if the talent will be as high overall, but assuming that the defensive line can be productive and that the linebackers kind of round into form. We talked about the depth at that position last week. I think that it's just going to be a matter of executing and playing together, that kind of that 1 of 11 philosophy to see Joe Gillespie's system through. I don't think they'll be a top 30 unit this year, but I think that they will be much more productive in 2023, though they may not force as many turnovers. We had a lot of good turnover luck last year.
I agree. Then last question, Davis W., who I know in real life, and I know why he's asking me this question. Will Texas A&M have a similar comeback season like the 2022 TCU team, Davis?
Who?
Texas A&M.
Who?
Davis, brother, all you got to do, you don't have to ask me questions like this. All you have to do is Google Texas A&M schedule 2023. And then you look at it and you say, do we still play Alabama this year? Oh, yep. Okay. Oh, do we play Tennessee this year? Yep. Oh, and we're at Tennessee. Do we still play LSU this year? Oh, yep. We're at LSU this year. And there's your answer.
Yeah. Why do people want to join the SEC? I don't know. Last question before we go. Adam asks, why is Sacramento the capital of California? Is it just a jumping off point for camping in Northern California? I'm not even going to get to Martin's response on that. You can go on Twitter if you want to see it. Listen, Sacramento has a rich and unique history. And what most people don't realize is Sacramento was actually the first founding spot in California. It is the hub of the gold rush. It's the hub of the Transcontinental Railroad. It was the business epicenter of not just California, but most of America during the gold rush. And everybody had to come through Sacramento because it was far enough from the ocean to where it was not easily attackable, but close enough to major water fares to make trade very, very easy. I will say this, that a couple weeks ago, I was in Napa on a Saturday. I was in Tahoe on a Sunday. This weekend, I was in the Bay Area. People can crap on Sacramento all they want, but we have excellent weather, excellent food scene. We won't talk about the cost of living. We won't talk about the unhoused people population problem. But when you consider everything else that goes into living Sacramento, a place that I did not appreciate as a young person, but I grew up as a suburb of Sacramento, which is embarrassing. Living in Sacramento now, I have to say, is what a wonderful place to live, to raise a family, I'm sure, and to enjoy wonderful weather, and also hashtag light the beam.
And with that, this has been another episode of Frogs Insider. Thank you for listening. Please make sure that you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to the Dave Campbell's Republic of Football Network. There you'll get not only access to our podcast every week, but access to all of the podcasts across the network, which means that you get a podcast for every D1 football program in the state of Texas. It's awesome. There's nothing else like this out there. Make sure you're subscribed there. If you want just the Frogs Insider stream as well, also subscribe to that wherever you find your podcasts. That'll give you just our feed, but hit up that network feed as well. That helps us out. That helps all our buddies out across the network. And it helps out Dave Campbell's Texas Football, which we love them for letting us be a part of that. Yeah. Shout out to Home Field Apparel for sponsoring this episode. Shout out to Melissa for always being the best co-host out there. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Frog Preacher. She's at the Coach Melissa. Find us on Threads. Same handles, I'm assuming. At least mine is the same.
Mine will be probably Melissa Tree because it's my Instagram handle. Follow me on
there
Instagram
we go.
Too. Why not?
Follow Frogs Insider on Instagram and YouTube. And you know what? That's enough promo. We'll see you next time. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.